Okay, next item we're going to take a look at is capturing events. This, I would say, is a very, very critical part of the tracking site. Any user that's going to be logging in usage events, it doesn't matter if this is the techs themselves that are doing their own usage events and they're logging them on site as they're sort of finishing the work, or this is maybe the back office or admin users, they're adding in the usage events on behalf of the techs. This is where it's critical to get that information in there correctly and to get all of those usage events in there as they occur, so that those numbers, as far as the leak rates and the total amount of refrigerant used, all those are accurate. But where all that happens is actually inside of the refrigerant, sort of entry area. Let's go ahead and log into the tracking site and get there. This is where all of the usage events are going to happen. It's all under record event. So just think, as a user, and I'm doing work on site, if refrigerant's being added into a system, that's a refrigerant usage event. Doesn't matter if it's reclaimed, virgin refrigerant, that's a refrigerant usage event. If that refrigerant's being removed from the equipment, it's not going back into that original system, or it's being, added into a different system, that is a usage event. Maybe that refrigerant's being reclaimed, that's a refrigerant usage event. So anytime you've got a usage event, just think, I need to go ahead and record that. Okay. The basis of where a lot of the usage events occur in terms of capturing events happen with this sort of chained event where we have a leak inspection. This is where we have a leak that's found, there's a repair that's done, and then there's refrigerant that's added. So this is probably most of the time the techs are out on site and they're doing their work. Maybe they have a call out for a high temp alarm. Maybe they are out there for preventative maintenance and they're like, oh, I see this system is low. And you know what? I found a leak. This is where the chaining of the events will occur. The tracking site's really good about saying, if we're going to start here, it'll then sort of link you through, to the other two related steps. So other types of usage events that are on here, we're looking at this in sort of summary view as sort of a high level sort of user. This would be like the equipment owner. The techs at their view, they wouldn't nearly have all of these options in here, but as I'm looking at this, just think I'm approaching this as sort of equipment owner. So some of these other items that are in here, like these retrofit decisions, the retrofit plan, the retirement plan, all those are really for the equipment owner to set up a decision-making process and say, yeah, I'm going to make a decision on this, and then I'm going to, enact a retrofit plan or retirement plan. So those are really for the equipment owner. So those will not probably come up a whole lot. And then we also have a couple of other items. These are having to do with either compliance. This is this EPA 125 chronic leaking report, or we have the calibration. That's the calibration on leak detector. That is important for compliance too. They want to see that those leak detectors are calibrated, and an audit is completed on an annual basis. So you can take care of recording those events so that leak detector, is up to snuff on site. Okay. Some of the other usage events that are here under the record event area, besides this sort of chained kind of standard usage event here, we have the recovery of refrigerant. And this is where you're pulling out maybe a contaminated refrigerant, maybe it's acidic, and it's got to go out for reclamation or destruction. We have refrigerant recovery. We also have a retrofit. So this is where potentially you're changing out the gas, you're moving to a lower GWP refrigerant. That's an example of a retrofit. Maybe you're doing a charge change as far as the size, or maybe the holding charge. Maybe there are additional sort of satellite units added on to maybe like a rack system. So that charge has to increase in total. That's an example of like a retrofit. So we're going to move that full charge up in the system. And the other thing you can do in the retrofit is sort of build a process of setting up that equipment and taking it sort of offline, so that we're going to go through the process of like mothballing it. That would take place here. Then we're moving into like the equipment removal, and then once we sort of add that equipment back online, we're taking it off of standby. We can actually do refrigeration equipment activations. The only time this guy really comes into play is during this whole mothball. I'm going to and then pull this back online. Let's say it's a year later, the system is going to be recharged with refrigerant, and it's going to be brought back online into service. So we have those as options here under this sort of record event area. And let's step through then recording a very basic usage event. And this is, probably where the bulk of the usage events are going to occur by the techs. This has to do with finding a leak, taking care of the repairs, and then adding refrigerant. And what we look at in terms of the compliance is if we're here in the U.S., and I'll use the U.S. and either the EPA and CARB as the example. So we're looking at a 30-day window to complete those processes for the EPA. For CARB, we're going all the way back. They actually move that back to 14 days. Now, automatically, the tracking site, as long as you got that, sort of site coded as, the proper sort of, compliance area, it'll look for that, sort of calendar. So embedded in here, you don't have to worry, oh, I got to complete this within 14 days, but understand that those dates are pretty firm. And you want to make sure to get those sort of usage events taken care of, within that time frame. If you needed to push out those usage events and say, I'm going to apply for an extension, that is still another option here. But understand that if you use this as an option under your refrigerant usage event here, you still have to make the application out to those sort of formal authorities, whether you're talking with the guys in CARB or the EPA. So there's the ability for you to kind of set up that report that you're going to send off to those agencies. This won't automatically do that, and it sets it up so that you can send it. You still need to email it separately. Okay, so let's kind of dive back into our usage event, a standard, sort of process. How would we go in terms of setting up the usage event? Under the record event, we want to make sure we choose, again, our company. We want to choose our region, or we could actually just go from the company and dive right into the site per se. And so we'll say, all right, I've got this site 6. I found a leak on a system here, and let's move into the usage event area. So we've got a couple of systems in here. I could say, all right, and maybe I'm looking at this RTU1. I've got some usage here, found a leak. We're starting to get into the warmer months here. So the techs are doing their services up. I found a leak. I had to recharge that system, and I also, enacted a repair. Okay, let's step through the usage event. So we see that automatically the system sort of guiding and saying, all right, next. That then sets up the leak inspection. Anything with an asterisk in these areas, these are all the required bits. We can adjust the data as needed, the tech. I am the licensed sort of EPA, in this case here in the US, the EPA licensed tech. If you get to this area and you get a nasty message that says, oh, you're not licensed, or there's no certification, that just means there's no alignment by that user with an EPA cert card or refrigerant handling card. Just make sure you add the refrigerant handling information against that tech. Then you'll be set in terms of that item. But in this case, all right, I've got my EPA refrigerant handling card, the EPA 608 card. Okay. We've got the date. We can adjust that as needed. Then we've got the test method. If I don't fill something out here, or let's say I were to try and leave something blank, the system would then kind of prompt us and say, hey, there's a problem here. If I were to not choose a test method and try and save this, so I'll show you this here in a future step. The system will say stop. Can't move forward, or if you do move forward, something's going to be unfinished. You're going to have a task that's going to be coming due in that compliance conduct. But let's kind of step through standard usage event first and say, all right, text out here. I found my leak. I'm going to add in a couple of work order numbers, event numbers. The other thing you can do in these usage event areas in terms of capturing events is adding in documentation. So if you had maybe an invoice to add on this usage, maybe there were pictures of a leak point, technical product diagrams, stuff like that. All of that can be added here into the documents area, and this pops up under all of the usage event areas as well. This is a sort of a common theme that's documented. Okay, let's go ahead and let's move through our leak inspection. So we're saying we've, if I were back up here, I'm about to say this leak-free system will not, in that case, say that we have a leak. So we'll go ahead and make the correction on that and say, yes, I found a leak. Where did I find that leak? We're going to say that was found on a line. And let's say it's on this control or capillary line. Go ahead, save. So we see as I'm building this leak, what happens is the system will then highlight, I've found a leak down here and allow you then to save. So as we hit these buttons and we see, it may say save or next, make sure you're sort of advancing the system into the next sort of step in the process. Let's go ahead and let's hit save. And here's our confirmation. I found one leak, and here is an event number. That means it's being logged in history. Great. Let's go ahead and let's hit save. Now the system's guiding you through, and it says, all right, you found a leak. you want to take care of the repair and you want to take care of that gas ad? You could, if you said no, that would then be, set as sort of scheduled tasks. In this case, since this is like an EPA coded site, the system would look for those to be done within that 30-day window. These would be sort of like a scheduled task as up and coming. In this case, we'll say, yeah, I'm actually completing everything right now. So if I were to do that, we see that automatically the system takes us into the repair. We see under the repair that I've got, the previous event, that just had occurred, and it will also show us that, the repair is, not going to be due until, October in terms of, compliance. But in this case, let's go ahead and let's hit next. This takes us then into the repair. This is where I have the initial and the follow verification. In reality, if you said, I was out here now and I took care of my initial, but I'm going to do that follow up, let's say in a few days, you can separate those date wise. And so I wanted to show you a couple things before we sort of get further into this. If I were to try and save this as is without saving anything, without sort of touching any of these sort of required fields, we'll see the system will pop up and it'll say, are you sure? And what it'll look like is you'll get a bunch of red like this, or maybe you get red for one line. Maybe there's just one thing you missed. So this is where you have the ability to come back and say, hold on a second. I did not mean to leave these incomplete. Let me come back and let me fix all of these. Right. Let's go ahead and let's hit, continue and edit. So let's come back and say, great. Let's go ahead and let's hit repair. And we're going to set up then our test method. Maybe we use the bubble test. And I'm going to say pass. And in this case, under the follow-up, maybe we did come back and we did a calibration leak detection device. And this is where, if we wanted to make an adjustment to the date, this is where I would make that change inside of here. I could say, all right, I'm going to come in here and change the date. If I were to do this, we see I can open up a calendar, and then that will allow me to sort of advance the data. This is if I were coming back in later, maybe to complete that follow-up. The way I would sort of enter this, if I were to want to separate these, is not code this area, not advance this follow-up further, because what will happen is the system will look to schedule that follow-up as sort of a future task. In this case, let's say the text said, I did everything I needed to, so I'm going to take care of that, right here, right now. Great. Let's go ahead and let's click on this box. Let's hit pass. And then we can add in work order numbers. And we see the system is great. It's kind of carrying those work order numbers over, so you don't have to enter them again in each one of these steps. Go ahead and let's hit save. Now here is our confirmation, and if we click on this as our next step, what the system will then do is say, hey, did you have to add refrigerant? And this is the point where the tech or back office user entering this could say, I'm checking my records. You know what? They didn't add refrigerant. All I had to do was tighten the fitting, and it was fine. So you could say no, and that would end things. You're not then in any sort of a jeopardy or compliance related issue. You can just do the repair and say you found a leak, and right, that's the end of it. In this case, we'll say, yeah, I did actually have to add refrigerant. Okay, so in terms of adding refrigerant, in this screen, you do get a quick look on any refrigerant usage events within like the last 30 days. That can be very helpful because the tech could say, oh, I didn't know that. Maybe before I enter this, I need to do some other, checking and see, what's what. Or maybe they look at these and they say, oh, those aren't right. Those were entered in error. I've heard that. And if that's the case, they can either, edit and delete some of those events, or they can get with us, at Connected Solutions if they really have a deeper sort of, probing question on how do I fix this? This is what happened. This isn't right. Get with us because we can help you sort of step through that. But looking at our usage event, we just want to complete our gas ad. We've got then me and the refrigerant type, all kinds of good information. And we'll just say how much refrigerant was added. If I said, I added 125 pounds, you can't add in more refrigerant than the system holds. If this were the case where the text said that full charge isn't right. I think that got entered way back when with the wrong charge. It was an estimate. I need to get that updated. That's where the whole retrofit thing could also come into play. In this case, in terms of the gas ad, we'll just say maybe just added, quick 15 pounds. And then moving back into our usage event, we'll say that gas he's coming from outside of our stock. And we'll go ahead and we've got then the save button. We want to hit save, and then we hit confirm. We see at this level, this is where our leak rate is going to occur. Great. So here is our confirmation. So that's a standard, set usage event. This is where I would go to capture all of those events. These other events are sort of will occur over time. We'll cover these under sort of a separate, training. I wanted to show you basically, sort of probably the most common set of usage events as we're on here. But any questions that you guys have on using the system, those are always good to come back to us on Connected Solutions. We're happy to help sort of, kind of flesh out, where do I start? I've got this recovery, but then I had a gas change. We can help you to set those up. But those are also on here in case you need to take care of them. Great. So that would be sort of a basic set of, capturing events.